Hello everyone and welcome to the Restore Sitting Room. Over the next few weeks we're going to have to do church a little bit differently because of the current situation that we're facing.
I have to say, I've never ever wanted to do video church. I don't like, everything about it was everything that I've never wanted to do. I don't like cameras in my face and all of that sort of stuff. But the reality is we had no choice.
And I remember there was on the Saturday a run through and to check it, and I watched that, I call it rehearsal, it was a run through checking everything, and I watched it on a laptop from where I was, and just think it was the most bizarre thing.
The serving that we had from people who knew what they were doing enabled us to do it at a standard that I think was beyond our wildest dreams. I certainly couldn't have done that, and was a massive gift to us. And so for those couple of years, really, when we were live streaming on Sundays from here, it was such a gift and so key in terms of keeping the church together and focused and caring for one another with a sense of vision going forward.
There was something really special about being able to come together as best as we could in those times, and I think across locations as well. So there are friendships I've got, I think now, from within Alderton or Epping people or Woodford people, who, because we were part of the kind of post-service Zoom.
What I see is Restore being restored, and almost, if it's not blasphemous, but almost, no, that's not the right word, a phoenix rising from the ashes, and becoming a new creation and being restored, holding on to the DNA, but finding new ways to express that DNA, the community being at the very heart of it.
In reality, out of the Beyond Ourselves connection, we ended up with the Collins family commuting to Loughton on a Sunday and their relational family network. And after a little while, Ben said, could we start an expression of Restore in Enfield?
Bacon Church had started in my parents' home, and they were meeting, and I was coming over to Loughton kind of once a month. We kind of just thought this Bacon Church was getting to the point where it needed a bit more structure perhaps and a bit more leadership guidance as it was growing, and so approached Restore kind of and said, could this be an expression of Restore locally in Winchmore Hill?
We had a group of people from Loughton who were on a rota who drove over to help make the meetings happen each time. So as people go once a month over there and just give some of the resource to start making it happen. And it started to grow. After a few months, it was kind of like, well, if this is going to develop, we need somebody over here working there. And we ended up in a conversation with Pete and Michelle Goldring, and I know them of history. And so we all came up with the idea, why don't we ask Pete and Michelle to join and see if they would lead it? And so Pete then took over it.
Southgate Christian Fellowship were a group of people gathering and have gathered for many, many years. And their leadership, John Rawding, he approached Pete and I and said, we're aging. Didn't mean they were lacking energy. They're incredible still. But didn't have anyone to take it. I wondered if we could adopt in the Southgate Christian Fellowship folk into Restore Winchmore Hill.
When we came out of the COVID years, we weren't quite sure where to meet. And a little bit like the Epping story, really. We tried a few places, but none of them quite worked for us. And we've been going through a couple of years of trying to work out what is God saying and what should we look like for this new season. And over time, really, we went back to the fact there's a core group of people here with a heart to make church work for those for whom church doesn't readily work. And so we've reshaped Winchmore and are just really putting our toe in the water for a new season.
We'd been blessed past generations with their faithfulness in building this church in such a prime location in the first place, and the work had continued. We'd celebrated 120 odd years of the work here, and we felt a great responsibility to make sure that it wasn't us that shut the door and put the lights out, as it were.
We just went and they asked us questions about Restore. We shared what we felt God has said to us through the years as Restore, kind of a bit of who we are. I didn't big up anything because I wasn't sure we wanted to do it, or, we wanted to make sure God was in it. Anyway, out of that conversation, they came back and they was like, right, can we come and join Restore? And what would that look like? And I have to commend the leadership team at Albany, because it's not easy giving up leading and stepping into another church. And they were all in.
Leadership, I think, wise enough, spirit-filled enough to see the necessity to hand it over to the next generation, and then God putting a leader, Jew, in there, and seeing that church revitalized, and seeing the church then standing up again and impacting the community. That, for me, I think that was the highlight.
Restore Albany now is a continuation of the old, but moving into the new, I would say. With Jew as our congregational leader, we've been able to maintain the ministries and activities that were ongoing, which may have had to have been curtailed because of lack of personnel. But we've also been able to add to it. This morning here at the church, we've got Open Church, Grow Baby, which I describe as a food bank only for children's clothes.
The folk at Albany are high commitment and so invested in the church, but also reaching their local community. They're kind of your dream to have merge into you, because they're already engaged in reaching their community. They just need a bit of encouragement and resource behind them, which is what we've been able to offer. One of the early conversations we had with Tobias and Joyce was what sort of church did they want to plant. And I believe that every congregation will have a unique identity. We talk about the fact that we have the same family DNA, but just like all your children, if they're twins, they do look quite alike, Robert. But all your children share DNA, but actually they can be very different.
Coming to London was, for me, a learning path to try and live out just that prophetic word of someone from another continent, and in this case, maybe coming from Africa and Kenya, can actually lead a church, And the desire at that time was lead a church that looks like the neighborhood. And for us, that was a desire. Really, the desire was not to gather a few African men and women.
And I really admire them for the way that they made a stand, that they weren't going to do that and, in a sense, go the easy route, because at the end of the day, it's not just about attracting people. In a sense, that on some levels is relatively easy to do. It's actually about seeing life transformation and community transformation. That requires a different style of doing church and a different heart. And they were just brilliant at giving their all into Woodford.
I loved Canfield. I grew up at Canfield. They led me to the Lord. They had been there through all of my life. My university years I came home to Canfield. I adored Canfield. And I was always a little bit sad that I was no longer at Canfield. I knew Vineyard at that point was where I should be. But I'd always felt a little bit sad that I wasn't at Canfield anymore.
So I knew that God wanted to bring out something that existed before. So we were not really doing something new. It was more like redigging the wells. And so that's what I can say I started seeing in Woodford, like changing the reputation of the building. so that it's not just that old, cold building, but that it had life inside of it. It had people you would meet, and they were lovely people. And when I look at the 3 years, I feel like that's what God allowed us to do as pioneers in some way, redig some of those wells so that Woodford again is a place where the neighborhood feels, hey, that's a place with life.
Serving at Restore and hearing the words of prophetic words that said, this church was a youth ministry. There were so many young people here in the years that had gone before. And then watching God redo that in our 3-year time period there, watching young people come into the church, take positions of ministry, volunteer, start leading and playing and, becoming part of the worship team. That was just amazing to see unfold before my eyes, watching my children invite their friends from church, and then those children inviting their friends, from school. And that's how the youth ministry grew.
I think there was a turning point for us, for Duncan and myself, when we, after COVID, and we started having a different expression of church and community together when we formed Epping Restore.
I was going to go and plant it because I thought the easiest way of taking a group of people from Loughton to Epping would probably be for me to go and lead it. And so we were thinking about maybe a more traditional form of church planting. For one thing or another, because some of the stuff going on in our family, some of the demands on us, it just became apparent that I wasn't going to be able to lead it in that season. So we ended up having to pull back from doing that. What was amazing was at the heart of the group of folk who were church planting in Epping, they were like, we don't want to give up on this. We believe that God wants to reach our community. Can we still do this, even if it doesn't look like a conventional church plant?
A typical week in Epping has probably 3 gatherings. So our main church gathering is on a Thursday evening. We start at 7:30 with dessert and coffee and tea and so on. And then we have time to look at the Bible together and to pray together and to hear what God is saying for us.
For me, it's all about the mission. And if people are passionate about reaching their local community for Jesus, why would you say no to that?
It's actually been wonderful because the churches in Epping have all been involved, and in Thaden Boys have all been involved in welcoming the people that have come, that've been staying in those hotels. One of the hotels has shut now, so there's been quite a few people that have got their right to remain, or some of them haven't, they've been moved to other places, but got their right to remain, and now they're trying to navigate their way in a new community, housing, jobs and that sort of thing.
I think what we would want is to multiply so that eventually we outgrow meeting in one house, and then we would probably have a group that met perhaps in Thaden Boys and one that met in Epping as well.
That's Jodie Collins' fault. Jodie worked out in Tenerife for a number of years as part of an outreach project. It's called The Living Room, and it reached out to bar workers in Tenerife. If you don't know anything about Tenerife, yes, it is a holiday island. Yes, it is the cheap party place to go. Underneath the surface, there's a massive load of brokenness.
Here am I in Tenerife, leading a church that's a very good church, I may add, and vibrant, and it is a good church. But I've always sensed myself to be alone here. Relationships with other churches are there, but there's not another church quite like us until I met Restore. Right? And through, obviously, through Jodie meeting the leaders of Restore, I see a church there that is outgoing and working in the community, and that's what we do. So you'd think that all churches would do that, wouldn't you? But they don't.
if ever there was an opportunity to rethink church in Loughton, now's it. And so we started wrestling with the question, if we were going to church plant in Loughton now for the first time, where would we church plant? And we decided as a leadership, actually, we wouldn't in the Christian school, for which you have to demonstrate 7 years of attendance at a church to be able to get your child into it. Actually, we'd probably church plant somewhere else. And so I sent Stuart Hassard off to knock on the doors of all the other places we could meet and see what kind of response we got. And Stuart went to Alderton School, and the head instantly was like, I would love you to meet at my school, and I would love to partner with you. We've got massive community need locally, and I can't possibly meet the needs of that. But if I partnered with you, we could do so much more as a church, and it would help you with what you're wanting to do. And it's just a stone's throw from the Oakwood Hill Community Centre, which we'd just been given the lease of from the council. What has been wonderful has been to see how the relationship with Alderton School has grown, to see how we've been able to begin to develop more and more community activities from the Oakwood Hill Community Centre. And most wonderful and precious, we've started to see a flow of people from the local community come to meet Jesus for the first time. That's everything we're about. That's everything we've planned for. That's everything we've prayed for. That's everything that we've dreamed for.